it's literally removing like about 30 thousandths of an inch. And what it's doing is creating a radius. So the fingerboard has a radius. And it's literally like shaving a little bit off at every pass. So we call this a profile cut, which is in our shop, again, that's a rough cut. We still have another set of bits that is going to cut the next step. This cut is literally going to grab this bit, and I'll put my finger behind it so everyone can see. This bit is 25 thousandths of an inch wide. Yeah, that's the point. And that's the bit that's going to cut the press off. And it's literally 25 thousandths of an inch, so everyone can see it. So it looks like a little dental piece. But it's a micro end mill that's specifically ground to 25 thousandths of an inch.
How long will it run without being dull if you have a curve?
For this bit, it's about every 2 weeks we tag it out. So about every 100 fingerboards, we'll go ahead and tag it out. No, we can't sharpen it. In fact, all of the bits we have to recycle. We don't resharpen them because if we sharpen it and it takes 5 thousandths of an inch off, that it throws the whole geometry off. So we just send it back to our supplier. They melt. This is all solid carbide. They melt it and then they go ahead and make new bits. Excuse me. If you can imagine, when I first started building, those slots I cut by hand. That evolved into a saw that was on a table saw. And then I had like this template that I created and I was cutting the slot, which evolved to something that looked more like a game saw. So there was a series of blades and we could cut all of the fret slots in one pass. So, I could get one fretboard and go through one pass and it had all the slots. So it's so fast. I mean, I could cut a fingerboard literally in like a second underneath the fret slot. How do we integrate the technology? Because I think the first thought is, okay, with the CNC, I guys can make ukuleles quicker. But the reality is, no. Frank, Pete, Dwight, Joe, we can make this fingerboard a lot quicker than the CNC machine. With that bandsaw and this router cable or shaper cable that we used to use. In this case, it takes us almost 12 minutes to make one fingerboard. So it's longer, but it's way more accurate. And this is going to become the back of the ukulele. But when we look on the inside of the instrument, and I'll pass these around so everybody can see, there's these little etched lines that the laser is able to cut with very, very accurate detail of where the lower bout, the waist, the upper bout, of course our center line, which is so important to the building of an ukulele. And these are going to give us the location of where our bracing is going to go. So when the instrument goes to the bracing station, we know exactly where those need to go. So I'm going to pass these around and everybody can kind of see, go one way and the other way. And while you guys are looking at those, I'm going to show you, these are a set of sides for this instrument. And if you look really closely, you'll see there's this kind of funky looking taper that's going on the back of our instrument. All of these different heights are going to make sense as we bend the ukulele into that figure 8 shape and we create that classic shape. These heights are all going to start to create a dome, which of course is the beginning of our radius or rounded back. Now the front of the ukulele is flat, very much like a classical guitar. So you'll see this side which is flat. These are book matched, so they're a matching pair. They go with that body of the instrument, which then has already gotten its initial cut of the rosette, and then we're going to do the inlay, and then we're going to go ahead and brace the instrument. So what Drew will do is he'll number all of the work pieces, and that number will ultimately become the serial number on the ukulele. So there's a point in here where the sides are going to go into side bending, blocking, curve lining. The fronts and the backs are going to go on to get a rosette, an inlay, and then onto the bracing station, and then they're all going to come back together where we're going to put the front, the back, and the sides together and basically marry the body and assemble the instrument. What we'll do is we'll use the serial number, which is on the inside of the instrument, to make sure that this front goes with this back, goes with these sides, and ultimately when we assemble the instrument, we're reinforcing all the hard work that took place in milling to make sure that it's a matching set, front, back, and sides. Thank you. So this is a special instrument that I've been working on. These, of course, is the back, that's the front. I was doing the rosette inlay. And it's going to be a pretty special instrument. So the inspiration of that instrument was we were at our reforestation project, and in Hawaiian language, we have different levels of the forest. So where we're located is the Vaunahele, which really is in our family name. And I'll go over that a little bit later. But in the Vaunahele is kind of the deep forest. Just above us is what is called the Valapua, which is pretty much the highest level of forest before we start to look at the heavens. And while we were there, I seen these three streaks running across the sky. And these three streaks were like running parallel with each other. And it was so unique because we learned what is evaporating, our VOCs, or volatile organic compounds. And that's stuff not good for us and not good for our environment. So we converted to a UV cured finish back in May of 2006. And the UV and how it cures is very different. So in theory, we could apply finish to the ukulele, hang it outside, hope for a beautiful Hawaiian sunny day, and the finish would cure. Now, of course, the downside to that is, here in Kanile'a, it's not a matter of if it's going to rain, it's when is it going to rain. Also, the sun emits a broad spectrum of light. A lot of what the sun emits generates heat. Heat is not good for the instrument, and it's not good for the finish. It won't allow the finish to bond or to cure. But because we have a humidity-controlled environment, we have an air duct specific for our light box, which keeps the ambient temperature in the light box cool, which then allows the finish to bond more efficiently, or the polymers and the oligomers to bond more efficiently. So with the UV finish, the beauty in UV technology is when the finish is cured, it's cured. You can sand the instrument, you can buff the instrument. The downside to UV technology is when it's cured, it's cured. So if there's a flaw in the wood, a run, a drip, a flaw in the instrument, you actually have to sand all that down to raw wood, reapply finish, and pretty much start from square one, what we call a respray. So it's all about leading up to that pinnacle moment when you expose the instrument to UV, which then cures the finish. So right now, Scotty is actually working on prepping one of our platinums. Not just Scotty who works in here, he has also Wyatt, but I think Wyatt probably ran to the restroom. Also Kanile'a, who might be in final assembly, we'll see him a little bit. You know, he's here in finishing, and then Seth, we've seen him downstairs a little earlier. Seth also has been trained in finishing. And so the ukulele will go through a series of different steps here in finishing, ultimately leading to where we buff the instrument, and then we'll bring the instrument into final assembly. Are there any questions in finishing? Right now, that's a pore fill coat. So that's probably maybe a second or maybe third coat. You can ask Wyatt. Hey Wyatt, for those pore fills, how many coats is that on there right now? Is that three coats? Yeah, 3 coats. So 3 coats of pore fill. So the pore fill coat is basically the paw, the mahogany, the rosewood, the different woods that we use have the pores in the wood. And what we're wanting to do is bring that pore flush to the final surface. In order for us to do that, we use what's called a pore fill. And it's a UV cured pore fill. It looks kind of like clear pudding when we apply it. We'll apply it to the instrument, cure the instrument, and then scuff the instrument after we apply the coat. So basically we want to bring that low pocket, that's the pore, and bring it flush to the final surface, prepare it for the what's called a top coat. You know, when we come and do the final coat. Great question. Any other questions?
What if the curve cracks? How do you redo it?
Our gonna hear
So
the early
if,
part.
if the varnish splits or cracks,
Uh-huh.
you have to start again.
Well, fortunately with the UV finish, and his question is if the varnish cracks. Fortunately with the UV finish, it's changed the way that we finish an instrument. So the traditional nitrocellulose, or the lacquer finish, as everyone kind of knew it as, has a tendency to crack over time, or what's called cold check. Whereas the UV finish, it doesn't cold check, it doesn't crack. The finish is actually, it's interesting because it's soft, but it's still hard enough where you can buff it. So the finish will expand and contract with the wood, which will prevent the finish from cracking. If the instrument has a crack, to say, its chances are not in the finish, it might be in the wood. And at that point, then the instrument is no good. So, ideally we don't want any cracks in the wood. You have to just identify that earlier if there was one. But ever since we converted to the new side benders, we haven't seen any cracks on our sides anymore. And that was something that really kind of plagued us. Because you wouldn't, sometimes they're a hairline and you couldn't see it with the naked eye until you apply your first coat of finish. And the finish just magnifies everything 100 times. So we had instruments that didn't make it because a crack revealed itself.
So if they drop it and it scratches, they want it redone.
Oh, the customer,
Yeah.
if they drop it. For the UV finish, it's repairable to say, but for us, because the UV is so unique, we only really repair our own instruments. So if it's a nitrocellulose or a lacquer finish, we really don't have any of that product in the shop, so we're not able to repair the lacquer finish, only our UV finish. And it is repairable because it happens. Here's a classic story, right? This gentleman has a ukulele. He loves his ukulele. He puts it in his ukulele stand when he's not playing. It's right next to his couch. And he grabs it, he plays it, he loves it, he puts it away. And then his buddy comes by. And his buddy does what buddies do. And jumped on the couch. The whole couch shifted. And it rammed into the ukulele and actually cracked the ukulele. But we were able to fix it. Of course, you have to send it back to us. And in that case, we actually replaced the soundboard. We have to put a new top on because the crack was pretty nasty. So it's repairable, but it's it's kind of an extreme, I guess, to say when the whole soundboard is cracked. If it's just like a drop and like a ding, if it's in the wood, then we still have to sand it to raw wood and then reapply the finish. If it's just like a scuff, say if somebody plays really, really hard and they just scuff the instrument, those kind of scuffs, we can go ahead and we can buff out. Great question. Yeah, so his question is how many coats of finish? We put 3 coats of pore fill and 1 coat of top coat. That's all we do. So the old way of finishing a musical instrument, it took us 14 to 16 coats to get that wet, glossy look. With the UV finish, we're able to achieve that wet, glossy look with just 1 top coat. But we do those pore fill coats to help bring the pore level to the finished surface. So that's kind of one of the tricks to say in UV finish is using the No, we do. Yeah. So his next question was. You're welcome. His next question was, so after it comes out of the light box, it's that shiny. All you have to do is just go to the next step. Where in reality, so I can just maybe explain the finishing. We'll apply pore fill, that kind of clear pudding, cure the instrument, scuff the instrument. So we'll scuff it with the first coat 400 grit. Then we'll apply a second coat, cure, scuff 600 grit. Apply a third coat, cure, scuff 600. So that's what Wyatt does. He's going to go with 600 grit. Then we're going to apply the top coat. Once the top coat is cured, then we'll come in with 800, 1200, 1500, and then buff the instrument. So that's what the buffers are along the back wall when we go to buff the ukulele. So that's kind of a series of steps. Yeah. Any other questions?